Well, welcome to my FIXKIT 30-inch fire pit review. Not only is it a review, I'm going to show you step by step exactly how to put this thing together, and it can just be done by one person on their own. So if you're a single parent and you're thinking of getting one of these, I'm going to show you exactly how to put it together. And I have to say, the heat this thing is thumping out is absolutely cracking, because on full heat it gives out 50,000 BTUs, and I have to say, for the money, it is extremely well built indeed. A little bit tricky to assemble in places, but I'm going to talk you through step by step exactly how to assemble this, and as I say, can be done by one person on their own. And if you like what you see today, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Anyway, let me show you how we got here. Well, welcome to my FIXKIT fire pit review and assembly guide. This is a 30-inch steel gas fire pit. Works off a standard propane bottle. So in this video, you're going to see me unboxing it. We'll see just what we get for our money and how easy or not it is to put together. I'm going to show you how to do that step by step. And the one thing I would say about this fire pit is, well, I hope one person alone can assemble this. You're going to need two people to lift the box, the guy to bring this into the house on a pallet truck. It is extremely heavy. One person on their own, you're really going to struggle to move this thing. So when you get it delivered, make sure you get the guy that delivers it to use the pallet truck to help put it into position you're going to assemble it in. Okay, well, we've got our instruction manual. That's clearly going to be the first thing to look at. But the first thing I want to do is unbox everything, put it out on the side, look at what we've got for our money, and then read the instruction guide and show you how to put it all together. That appears to be a cover for the fire pit, so I'm going to put that carefully to one side and then lift it out the box. Okay, well, in the bag with the instruction manual, besides the instruction manual itself, we get one AAA battery. I'm assuming that is the igniter for the fire pit, and we get a hardware pack. The one thing it doesn't come with is any kind of mini screwdriver or hex key to put this together with. So let me read the instruction manual and show you just what tools you're going to need to put this together with. Just remember, guys, if you like what you see today, don't forget to subscribe. Okay, going to put the top of the fire pit down on that covering to make sure I don't scratch it, but you could likewise just put it down on the top of the cardboard box there. It appears to be very well packed, which is always quite a good sign. In the first box I open, we've got a little lava bricks for the fire pit, so I'll put those carefully to one side. I guess we've got our legs for the fire pit in here, and indeed we have, so let me get those out. Now, I noticed they've got colour-coded tape on them, so I'll leave that on for the minute. I mean, while all four legs appear to look identical, the fact that each one's got a different coloured tape on there, I'm certainly not going to touch that until I've read the instruction manual. And this next slightly unusual item that I'm removing is actually the gas bottle holder that goes in the bottom of the fire pit. Good they come with the cardboard so that you can lay them out on the floor without the risk of scratching them. And this is the cover for the coals and the burner when the fire pit is not in use. And green tape on that one, just a single panel in there, and lastly one single panel, so again I'm going to leave the yellow tape on there. So we've got everything unboxed now, laid out on the floor nicely. As I said, the tape is colour coded. It might not mean anything at all, but it's best not to remove it until I've read the instruction manual, which I shall do right now. Required for assembly, a Phillips screwdriver and a wrench, and it lists all of the hardware included, including the part numbers next to it. Okay, well, it shows the exploded diagram there showing how everything fits together, but our first job is to assemble the leg. Now, before we start, I mentioned the colour-coded tape on there. Every single part, including all of these legs, is actually labelled, and everything has got a letter on underneath. So I'm going to get rid of all that packaging to start. Okay, well, this is the gas connection with a safety label attached to it, which you should read. The one thing I would say is there's a ziplock tie around here. You need to be very, very careful removing that because you don't want to nick this. Okay, now I'm nearly ready to start. Now, I would say it's probably taking me about 20-30 minutes to get all this lot unboxed, particularly these screws, which are actually vacuum packed on there, meaning that none of them get lost from the packaging. Also meaning that you need the patience of a saint when it comes to getting them out of the packaging. Okay, well, it's time to assemble the legs, and each leg needs 2 of the screws marked AA in the packaging. Now, while you can use a Phillips screwdriver, I'm actually going to use my Black & Decker Roto bit, which I find on jobs like this makes them much, much faster indeed, but I will do the last bit of the tying with the Phillips screwdriver. And when it comes to fitting the legs, each leg, not only is each leg labelled, but each of the leg positions on the unit is also labelled. You need to pay very careful attention to that. Don't just go fitting all 4 legs at random, because the legs only have holes in one side of, and slightly bizarrely, the back of the leg mounts inwards. So you want the bulk of the leg inside the unit. You don't want it round like that on there, if that makes sense. You want it round like this. And I would say, if you're going to use a cordless screwdriver, for doing these, just hand tighten them to start with. You don't really need a cordless screwdriver to do it with, because they're only quite short screws, but it's just going to save me a little bit of time. Now, one thing I would say, I did read in the instruction manual at the outset, when fixing these legs on to start with, don't tighten them right the way down. So you want a little bit of flex in each leg. Now, a key point when assembling the legs, as it says, please don't tighten the hardware at this time. So I'm going to highlight that again in a second, but just remember from the outset, don't tighten the 2 screws you're putting in each leg. Okay, so once again, just spin the screws in lightly by hand to start with, ensuring that none of the threads, that no cross threading is occurring, because if the threads are crossed and you tighten the screws up, you're going to have problems. Again, just for speed, I'm going to tighten that most of the way down with the cordless screwdriver. Let's not go super tight. That's not tight enough, got a little bit of slop left in there. And as I say, the legs need to fit like that, fitting inwards. You don't want them fitting outwards like that. And the last leg A in place. Just keep those a little bit loose on there. Now for the side panels. Okay, well, the next step is assembling the side panels. 2 of them are the same. This one here, which is marked I, and that one on the floor there, marked I. This one here is marked with the letter J with an aperture on there. So the first thing it says to do is to fit window J to the front leg A and B. So this panel J fits between the legs A and B on there. Do pay attention to that, and it fits using 4 of these AA bolts through the side, 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. And once again, it says in the instructions, do not tighten the bolts at this stage. So the panel marked J is going to fit between the A and the B posts on here. The screws are actually going to go through from the inside into these holes, top and bottom on here. This plate is then going to go through the aperture and bolt on the inside there. Now, to aid the assembly, I would say bend this hose back a little bit, because this plate was wanting to push when I was trying to get the screws in to the side, making it very, very hard indeed. But so far, there's nothing on here that would have required the help of a second person. Although at this stage, this part of the job would be a little bit easier with 2 people. One trick I found is by holding the screw in like that with the screwdriver, the thing is much, much easier to put in than trying to screw it through by hand. My first screw in, which will make life a lot easier. You need to be very, very careful on these with them moving round to ensure it doesn't cross thread it. Okay, so 2 screws in, which is taking the weight of it. I'm going to tighten them in a bit, but it does say once again not to over tighten the screws. Bottom 2 screws in, 1 on that side and 1 on the corresponding side down here. Apologies, I'm not going to be able to get that good a camera angle on this one, but hopefully we will at this end. Even for me, it felt like I'm flying blind fitting this to it, so you're going to need a little bit of patience on here. Make that quite a bit of patience on here until the screw bites in. Okay, and the other one is just going to go in through this side. For the bottom 2 screws, you are going to need quite a bit of patience to get them to fit, because a lot of the time you're not necessarily being able to even see where the screw's going into. So tighten them up, but not over tight, so the thing is flopping around a little bit. At this stage, you're going to use the 4 small stainless steel screws marked BB on the packet and the 4 nuts on there marked CC to affix this panel through the J panel on here. I've moved it up onto the side purely so that I can get a better camera angle on it, otherwise you're not going to be able to see it easily. We're now going to push the control panel through there, but there's a zip lock tie here which I had not undone before, as I didn't know if we had to, and sometimes these types of things have something holding it in there, but I needed to remove that now in order that we can push this through the panel. And for this part of the job, I would say if you're doing it on your own, like I am here, you want to get it as near to flush with the panel as can be if you've not got anybody to help you put it together. And that was the dial just flying off onto the floor there. So we're going to put our screws through from this side. So let's get one through from the front there. And I will say, while it says wrench needed for assembling, it doesn't specify the size of the nuts on here. So I'll show you what I'm going to use in a second. So I'm just holding that, getting that finger tight on that. Do the same with the next one on this side. Okay, now it does even mention not over tightening these up, but to my mind you should be able to tighten these up nice and tight from the outset. Okay, last two going in, same thing again, push it in through the bottom on there. But as I said, the closer you get that plate up to being in position, the easier you will find assembling this, particularly if you're doing it on your own. And that's why I don't want you over tightening them, because you might fight against itself putting them on. There we are. Now, not knowing what size bolt was on there, I've got this adjustable wrench which I shall use to tighten them up in due course. Now it's time to fit the two of the side panels marked with the letter I on there, and they're going to go between B and C and D. So the first one here is going to go between B and C on here. So I'm going to turn my table round, and once again we're going to use 4 of the AA bolts on here, 2 through either side, going again through the holes to the inside. Now I would say at this stage, with the legs being loose, it does not aid getting these bolts in on the side panels, because the thing wants to move around quite a bit. And apologies on the camera angles on here. Now what I found is hold the bolt like that, nestle it home with a screwdriver until it bites in. They shouldn't be stiff going in. If they're stiff, chances are you've cross-threaded them. So then back the screw off, don't over tighten it. So that's my top 2 in, taking the weight of the panel. Now to get the bottom 2 in. So you'd think it'd be handy doing it from the other side, but you would have a heck of a reach across to be able to put the bolt in. And the bottom ones, as I say, do need quite some patience. But so far, yours truly has managed to do the whole thing on his own. Again, don't over tighten that, as according to the instructions on that. And time to put our last one in from the inside here. Well, it's actually quite well made on some of these things. The cheaper quality metal and bolts and things can cause you problems. And as I say, you don't want to over tighten it. I know why they say that. It's because you want that wiggle and jiggle room to be able to get everything into place. Anyway, time for the last panel, which goes between C and D. Apologies, I just said time for our last panel, which is not actually panel I, which I'm about to fit. It's panel H, which is the last one. This one is now going to fit between C and D in exactly the same way, using 4 of the AA screws. So exactly the same routine before, 2 screws on either side through the slots to the matching holes on the inside. So again, I'm getting the top 2 in to take the weight of the panel. Okay, that's our top 2 in, same with the bottom 2. So as you're fitting the panels on, the job is getting progressively harder as you've not got the elbow room to be moving backwards and forwards on. And as I say, these bottom screws, you are pretty much hunting blind as to where the thing fits in. As I say, you will need a modicum of patience when fitting in the bottom screws on each side, as you can't really see where they're going into. Now last one on here, and as I said in the instructions, it does say about not over tightening any of these on any of the panels on here. And I can tell this last one is going to be interesting to fit. The panel was wanting to jump out that way on me there, nearly making for some very child unfriendly language. There we go. That is all 3 of the what we call the fixed side panels on control panel mounted. As I say, none of it should be super tight at this stage according to the instructions, including all of the bolts at the base. As I said, it says do not tighten the bolts at this stage. Okay, well, I turn over to step number 3, which is just virtually a continuation of step number 2 on there. Certainly nothing different and nothing that I haven't already covered on there. Just say again, do not tighten the bolts at this stage. Step 4, assembling the gas tank support, which is this bit. And I've moved a unit around so that it looks exactly the same as it does in the diagram. So that is going to go across on the top there. I was wondering what these 4 holes were through on either side on there. So that looks like being my remaining 4 bolts going through on there. So indeed, we are now going to use 4 of these bolts, 1 through in each corner. And when it fits in, it wants to fit in like that. It doesn't want to fit in with the hole for the bottle on the other side. In the hole for the bottle needs to fit nearest the empty panel space on. None of these bolts have been tightened, which doesn't make this overly easy. Now, I would say at this stage, bear in mind nothing has been tightened up on here as yet. It's not super easy to be putting these screws in, particularly given the room you've got to work in. So what I've done is got the screwdriver through the bolt like that, and then fingers crossed we bite in on our hole on there. Yeah, and that one's going in. Now make sure you have got the other nuts to hand, because once this is like up in the air, you don't want to be faffing around having to leave it. This is definitely one of those installation jobs that I've done that I would say needs more than a modicum of patience, and this particular part is not proving overly easy for getting these screws in. Just needs a little bit of patience on there. I have to say, struggling a bit on that, but again, loosely tighten them up when I don't want to go super tight on any of these as yet, according to the instruction manual. Now, 2 more to do, one on this side and one on this side around here. The camera angle on this will probably be just about impossible. That one's being nice to me. I was thinking that was going to be very tricky indeed to get that one, because once again I can't really see in there. Last one to go home. I think just about last one of my screws to go in is that one on there. Okay, the main thing is to take time on these to ensure that they're not cross-threaded. They shouldn't feel super stiff when going in. If they are, the chances are it's cross-threaded, and if you tighten the screw when it's cross-threaded, you're going to have problems. It might jam halfway in, it might not screw in fully at all. Anyway, I'm looking 95% complete, I think. Okay, connect the gas tank support to the assembled bolts by using the 4 bolts, etc. on there. Now tighten all AA bolts with a Phillips screwdriver. So now is the time to tighten everything up on the unit. Now I have to say, while I advise not tightening any of these bolts up on the unit along the way, I think you could easily tighten these 4 on the control panel as you're going along. But anyway, I'm going to tighten everything up with the screwdriver and my wrench, and then we'll come back for step 5. Comes to tightening the 4 bolts up on the control panel. As I said, I think this would be a lot easier part of the job done, doing that at the same time you're actually assembling that panel. So when tightening up the bolts on the side panels, try and ensure the side panel is flush and not poking out at one end or the other. The screwdriver being useful, certainly for tightening these screws up on the inside. Once again, it's just making sure they're flush. It's an absolute godsend using the screwdriver. I did mention the more you work on this, the harder it is, because when I'm reaching across here to the back one to make sure that panel is flush with the outside, my neck is wanting to rest on here, making it very, very hard indeed to access that back screw from where I am. And there are all the bolts tightened together. Well, I was going to do all the bolt tightening off screen, but there's a couple of things that I want to show you that might make your life easier doing it the way I do. Okay, step number 5, assembling the door, which is part number H. You are going to slide these hinge pins into the door as depicted in the graphic here. So to do that, I'm going to need to turn my unit upside down and get the door on. Now everything in the assembly so far I've been able to do by myself, and one person, single parent, could do the same job following my instructions, fingers crossed. At this stage, it would be helpful if you had a second person to lift the unit down onto the floor, because there's a lot of weight in there now. As I said, that initial box it came in was a 2-person lift, so you've nearly got all of that weight remaining in there. Other than that, no, I'm lowering it down blind. I would put something nice on the floor to rest it on. Just down onto there. There. I'll lift it back up the stage. There we go. Whew. And by putting on that nice smooth surface on there, managed to keep the top free from any scratches. Okay, so with the unit on the floor, the last step is to fit door number H, which is the one with the metal safety tag, which is worthwhile reading inside it. And that hinge pins on this simply slot down, one at the top, one at the bottom. It says, gotta get them to go in, both go in together, like that. And there we are. And that's our fire pit virtually ready to use. But first of all, the lava bricks on the top. Okay, now placing the lava rock. Place the lava rock into the fire bowl. Note, ensure no lava rock is placed on the ignition portion of the burner. Then place the cover E on. Note the cover E, which is this one, must be removed before operation, and you also need to let it cool down before putting that back on afterwards. I will certainly remove the sticker, as that might melt if there was a little bit of heat on there. But one thing to do is pay attention. Warning, never use wet lava rock in the fire pit. Can explode. Brand new lava rock may contain a small amount of moisture, causing the rocks to pop when the fire is first lit. Stand well away from the pit until all popping sounds cease. So I'm certainly going to move it away from my dining area. Now this is the ignition area. So it says about not putting the rocks on there. Bit of cardboard, which we don't want in there. In fact, I'm always going to put them on, otherwise I'm going to be here all day. Okay, that is my lava bricks around there. I'm now going to move them around by hand to level them out and move them away from the ignition area. You are going to need to do this manually, because otherwise your cover is not going to want to go on flush with the unit. So there may be some wiggling and jiggling required, and you may not even need all of these lava bricks. Okay, well, one obvious way to test that everything is nice and level is, will the cover fit on without protruding? And it will. So I think I'm ready to mount the gas, but it's not going to be sitting here. So before I go putting that propane bottle in and adding weight to it, we're going to move it to its resting place. The last thing to do before that is to unscrew this ignition and put the battery in. Okay, and it does actually look like it goes in with the positive end coming outwards on there. One easy way to test, obviously. Tighten it up, and that works absolutely fine. I can hear it clicking on there. That's very efficient. It's not one of those that just is a single click. When you push it, you can hear that thing doing multiple. Yeah, I can even see the little piezo spark through there. So all I've got to do, move this into place, and let's get some gas on and see how good the fire pit is. Okay, well, for the final bit, the test of the fire pit, need to fit the gas bottle in there. It connects to the gas regulator there, but before I go fitting that, I noticed there is this little clamp screw down here. Now you want to make sure that is undone. Then we're going to connect our gas bottle up. Okay, the last bit of the job, once I've got that nice and tight on there, I would recommend opening the bottle or ensuring the bottle opens before putting it in there, because this was a brand new bottle and it was that stiff I couldn't open the valve without getting it out from there. So I would recommend doing that. Then your bottle's going to lift in, put the button first in if you like, and the bottle should look like that ideally. So you've got a nice curve around in the pipe, no kink in the pipe. Our last job is to simply tighten that screw at the side, which is going to stop the bottle falling over if anybody bangs into the table, like they might do if you're having a party around your... Now before you even think about turning the gas bottle on, blindingly obvious thing, remove the cover. It would be very, very easy to turn the bottle on, go around the other side and fire the ignition up and have the cover on there. Okay, moment of truth. Turn the gas on low. Now, to get it to light initially, I needed to push the button in at the same time as turning it around. Then once at ignition, it lit. It then immediately wanted to go back out, so I had to hold it in until I think the thermostat had kicked in, and then I could release the gas valve on there. But now our fire pit is up and running. That's on low, and on high. Ooh, that's thumping out heat. 50,000 BTUs of heat to be precise. So even if you live out in a winter's climate, this thing would keep you nice and warm of a winter's evening around the pit. And I can hear the rocks beginning to crackle a little bit, so I'm going to turn it down. As it said, they might crackle and pop a little bit to start with, so maybe you want to do this away from any kind of dry area, if in case any hot embers or anything spit out. But all in all, looks pretty good. Well, thumbs up if you like this video, guys. Post any comments you might have in the comment section below the video, and hit the circle below to subscribe. And if you do hit the circle, don't forget to hit the bell.